I want you to just picture this scene for a second. It's July 10th, 1996. It's early. You're asleep in a boarding house room. You know, you feel safe. And then, bam, total chaos. You're jolted awake, and there are 4 men, heavily armed, standing in your room.
That is a terrifying way to wake up. I mean, that's movie stuff, not real life.
It gets so much worse. They drag you out of bed, pull you outside of the room, and then they tie you up next to a water faucet.
Wow.
And while you're sitting there tied up, helpless, you just have to watch as they go back inside and start tearing the whole place apart. They even force open a locked cabinet.
And that moment right there, forcing open a locked cabinet while the owner is tied up outside, that's where a simple arrest turns into a constitutional crisis.
Exactly. But here's the thing. If you ask the police what happened that morning, they would tell you a completely different story. A story about a guy just, peacefully boarding a tricycle on the street.
2 completely contradictory realities. A total split-screen scenario.
Yeah.
And usually in a he said situation, the courts almost always side with the police.
Usually. But today we're digging into a case where that script got completely flipped. We are doing a deep dive into GR number 16481, a Supreme Court resolution about a man named Senior Inspector Jerry Valeroso.
And this might sound like a crime thriller, but the real heart of the case isn't the gun or the kidnapping charge that started all this. It's a fundamental battle over the Bill of Rights.
It really is. I mean, this is one of those cases that forces you to ask a really basic question. If the police have a warrant to arrest you for crime A, does that give them a blank check to just tear your house apart, hoping to find evidence for crime B?
That is the central question. And the source we're looking at is a resolution from the Supreme Court of the Philippines, penned by Justice Nashura. The mission here is to really understand the limits of police power. How far can they go when they cross your threshold?
Okay, so let's unpack these 2 versions of reality. Let's start with the prosecution's story, the official police report. This is the version the lower courts bought into at first.
Right. So in this reality, you have SPO2 DeSwanko and his team. They're not rogue cops. They're following a dispatch order. They have a valid warrant of arrest for Valeroso.
But let's be super clear, the warrant wasn't for a gun charge, was it?
No, and that's a critical detail. The warrant was for kidnapping with ransom. I mean, a very serious charge, no doubt. So the team does their surveillance. They finally get a hit in Quezon City.
And this is where the tricycle comes into the picture.
Yes. They claim they spotted Valeroso on the street about to get into a tricycle. They approach, they arrest him, read him his rights, standard stuff. Then they do a bodily search.
Which, to be fair, is normal. It's officer safety protocol.
Absolutely. It's police work 101. And in their story, this is where they hit the jackpot. They claim they found a Charter Arms revolver tucked right into his waistband.
Along with 5 live rounds.
Yep.
So they check for a license, they claim he doesn't have the proper authority for it, and boom, he's charged with illegal possession of firearms under Presidential Decree 1866.
If you're a judge and that's all you hear, it seems like a pretty open and shut case.
It looks like a slam dunk. Warrant, arrest, contraband on his person. Check, check, check.
But Valeroso's version just completely detonates that whole narrative. He gets on the stand and says, there was no tricycle. I was asleep.
He testified he was at his children's boarding house. He's sleeping, and the police just burst in.
And he's so specific about the details. He says they dragged him out and tied him up near a faucet outside the room.
And that detail about the faucet is so crucial. It physically places him outside the area that gets searched. It creates a geometric problem for the police's later argument.
So while he's tied up, the officers go back in. They already have him, so they're not looking for him anymore. They're just searching. And Valeroso claims they forced open a locked cabinet. And then he hears an operative shout, "Hoy, may nakuha akong barrel sa loob," which is, hey, I found a gun inside.
Wow.
Now, Valeroso actually said he had a memorandum receipt for that gun from a colonel, which should have authorized him to have it. But the Supreme Court, when they finally looked at it, realized the bigger issue wasn't the paperwork. It was how the police got that gun.
Okay, but before we get to the Supreme Court's big reversal, we have to talk about the absolute nightmare Valeroso went through first. Because for a long time, nobody believed him.
That's right. This was a procedural roller coaster. The regional trial court, they convicted him.
So he appeals to the Court of Appeals.
And they just affirmed it. They tweaked the sentence a little bit, but the conviction stood guilty.
So his last stop is the Supreme Court. Surely they fixed it right away.
Nope. Even the Supreme Court initially affirmed the conviction. They looked at his petition and basically said the lower courts got it right. He filed a motion for reconsideration, denied with finality.
denied with finality. I mean, that sounds absolute. That sounds like the nail in the coffin.
It usually is. The doctrine of immutability of judgment is a huge deal in law. You can't just keep asking the court to change its mind forever. Cases have to end.
But Valeroso didn't give up. He did something kind of desperate, right? He wrote a letter appeal.
Which is, in legal terms, a second motion for reconsideration. And you're not supposed to do that. It's a prohibited bleeding. The court usually just throws those out without even reading them.
So why did they read this one?
Because of a massive, and I mean massive, plot twist, something you almost never see in a case like this.
This is my favorite part of the story. The Office of the Solicitor General, the OSG, gets involved.
Right, and for anyone listening, you need to understand the OSG is the government's lawyer. Their job is to argue for the conviction to keep the guy in jail.
They're the prosecution's top lawyers.
Exactly. So they're supposed to file a comment saying, ignore this letter, the case is closed, but they missed the deadline. And instead, they filed something called a manifestation in lieu of comment.
And when the justices opened it,
They probably couldn't believe what they were reading, because the government's own lawyers said, we think he's innocent.
they flipped. The OSG said the defense witnesses were more credible, the search was illegal, and they recommended acquittal.
It's just wild. It's like the prosecutor standing up mid-trial and saying, you know what, my bad, let him go.
So this creates a really weird situation. The accused is asking for acquittal, and the government is also asking for acquittal. But there's still that technical rule.
That procedural hurdle, yeah. Can the court even legally read this prohibited letter?
And this brings us to this fascinating idea of substantive justice versus technicalities.
It does, because the court could have just said, sorry, rules are rules. But they didn't. They made this incredibly powerful statement. They said that rules of procedure are just tools to help find justice. They aren't the masters.
I love that phrase they used, that courts are not slaves to or robots of technical rules.
It's a fantastic concept. It means courts have discretion. If following a rule to the letter means an innocent person stays in prison, the court can and should suspend the rule. They even cited other cases where they'd bent backwards to avoid that kind of injustice.
So, with the government now on his side, the court agrees to take one last look. And this is where we get into the real legal deep dive, the area of immediate control.
This is the absolute core of the legal issue. Remember, the police had an arrest warrant. They did not have a search warrant.
And you need a search warrant to toss someone's house, right?
Absolutely. The Constitution is crystal clear on that. You have a right against unreasonable searches. But there are a few specific exceptions.
And one of them is a search incident to lawful arrest.
Exactly. Let's break that down.
Okay.
The logic is simple. If I'm a cop and I arrest you, I can search you in the area right around you. And there are two main reasons for that. One, officer safety, to make sure you don't have a hidden weapon.
Makes sense.
And two, to preserve evidence, so you don't swallow something or destroy a document.
Right. If I'm being arrested, I shouldn't be able to reach into my pocket and pull out a knife.
Precisely. But here's the critical limitation. That search is limited to the person and the area within their immediate control.
Immediate control. That's the magic phrase.
It means the area where you could physically reach right then and there to grab a weapon or destroy evidence. It's all about what's within your wingspan, essentially.
So let's apply this to Valeroso's case. This is where that faucet detail becomes so important.
Exactly. So let's accept the court's version of the facts. Valeroso's outside. He's tied up by a faucet. The gun is inside the room.
And not just inside the room. It's inside a cabinet. A locked cabinet.
So could Valeroso, while tied up outside, somehow reach through the wall, unlock a cabinet, and grab that gun?
Obviously not. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud.
The court practically said as much. They made it clear that a locked cabinet inside a room is simply not, by any stretch of the imagination, within the reach of a man secured outside.
It seems so obvious.
A gun on a table next to the suspect. Sure, sees it. That's a danger. But rummaging through drawers and cabinets while the suspect is neutralized somewhere else, that's not a search incident to arrest. That's a general search. And for that, you need a search warrant. Period.
So that argument just completely falls apart. But the prosecution tried another one, didn't they? The plain view doctrine.
They did. This is another exception. If the police are legally in a place and they just happen to see illegal contraband sitting out in the open in plain view, they can seize it.
Like if they come to arrest me and there's a brick of cocaine on my coffee table.
Perfect example. They don't have to pretend they didn't see it. But, and this is a big but, there are very strict requirements. First, the police have to be there legally.
Okay.
Second, the discovery has to be inadvertent. That means accidental. You can't be actively looking for it. And third, it has to be immediately obvious that the item is illegal.
So why didn't plain view work in this case?
The locked cabinet. You don't accidentally see something inside a locked wooden cabinet.
You have to make a deliberate choice to open it. That's not seeing, that's searching.
Precisely. The court called it a general exploratory search. They were on a fishing expedition. The plain view doctrine doesn't give you a license to just poke around someone's house until you find something illegal. The second they forced that cabinet open, they violated the rule.
So both legal justifications for the warrantless search just failed completely.
Which brings us to the constitutional climax. The fruit of the poisonous tree.
Sounds dramatic.
It's fundamental. Because the search itself was illegal, it violated the Constitution. Any evidence they found because of that illegal search is inadmissible in court. It's tainted. It's poisoned.
So the gun, legally speaking, just disappears. It doesn't exist for the purposes of the trial?
Correct. It doesn't matter if it was a real gun. It doesn't matter if his paperwork was bad. In the eyes of the law, the prosecution can't use it. And if you don't have a gun, you can't have a case for illegal possession of a gun.
The result is acquittal.
An immediate acquittal. But what's really striking is the language the court used at the end of this resolution. It's not just dry legal text. It's a passionate defense of liberty.
I have the quote right here. It's powerful. Those who are supposed to enforce the law are not justified in disregarding the rights of an individual in the name of order. Order is too high a price to pay for the loss of liberty.
It's such a strong rebuke to that whole the ends justify the means argument. The court is saying it matters immensely how you get the evidence.
They went on to say that the Bill of Rights is the bedrock of constitutional government.
Yeah, that if you strip away people's rights, democracy just can't survive. It's a reminder that the rights of the individual are meant to be a shield against the power of the state.
And they brought up that classic legal principle.
Yeah.
It's better to let 10 guilty men go free than to convict one innocent man.
Exactly. The prosecution's evidence was tainted, so it couldn't overcome the presumption of innocence.
So Valeroso finally walks free. But looking back, it's pretty terrifying how close he came to staying in prison for years.
It really is. He lost at the trial court. He lost at the Court of Appeals. He even lost the Supreme Court the first time around. The system failed him 3 times before it finally corrected itself.
It makes you think, if you hadn't written that desperate letter or, if that lawyer at the Solicitor General's office hadn't had a crisis of conscience.
That's the scary part. The system worked in the end, but it took a Hail Mary pass and an incredible rare act of integrity from the prosecution. A person's freedom shouldn't hang by such a thin thread.
So what's the big takeaway for us, for you listening to this deep dive? Why does a case from 1996 still matter so much?
It matters because we have to stay vigilant. The court itself called this a warning against the awesome investigative and prosecutory powers of the government. Police power is necessary, but it has to have limits.
And it really solidifies the idea that your home is your castle. An arrest warrant is not a search warrant.
Exactly. Unless you have a weapon within arm's reach or contraband sitting out in the open, the police cannot just start ransacking your home without a judge's specific permission. That line is the difference between a free society and a police state.
It's a truly fascinating case. From a tricycle arrest that probably never happened, to a man tied to a faucet, all the way to a Supreme Court reversal that reaffirms our most fundamental rights.
It's a great reminder that technical rules should never get in the way of substantive justice. The truth has to be the ultimate goal.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into GR number 164815. It's a story about persistence, about our constitutional rights, and about how one locked cabinet changed everything.
And it's a good reminder that sometimes the system does get it right, even if it takes way too long.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We celebrated the fact that the Solicitor General flipped sides and recommended acquittal. But what if they hadn't? What if the government's lawyer had just done their job as usual and defended the conviction? Is it possible Valeroso would still be in prison today? It really forces you to ask, how often does our justice system depend not on the mechanics of the law, but on the individual conscience of the people within it? Something to think about. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious and know your rights.